Hello everyone, welcome back. As you can see, there's a different setup here. I am in a college dorm room, so there will be a different background, and I also will preface this by saying that all my books are at home on my bedroom bookshelf. I didn't bring any books with me that I wasn't gonna read, that I was planning on reading or had to read for school. So I left most of my books at home, so I will not be holding them up. I will be showing pictures of them. Also, before I get questions about anything, the book posters here, the book scratch off posters that I found on TikTok, I will link where I got them from. It's called Been There, Done That, I believe is what it's called, but I will link it below. Other questions, my earrings are these little peach earrings I got from an individual independent seller on Instagram. I will link her below. The curtain lights are from Target, and these posters here I printed myself. I found pictures that I liked on the internet and then I printed them out, 8x10 printer paper. It did use up a lot of ink, but it was worth it. So yeah. So I'm gonna go through my favorite classics. I know that not everybody on BookTube is a big fan of classics. I'm kind of in between both. There's definitely a part of me that is just pure YA, fantasy, pure entertainment kind of books, like Sarah J. Maas, Cassandra Clare, Harry Potter. Those are my fantasy favorites. But I'm also an English literature major, so I love old books. I love classics. I have a list of my top 10. I'm going to share them with you and count down. Number 10 is The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I read it junior year of high school, and then I actually just read it again for a class this semester, and I think that's why it's now on my favorites list from me rereading it, because it's just a perfectly crafted novel. Every single word holds meaning, feels so purposeful and intentional. Every single word is describing something, alluding to something, building a metaphor, building a symbol, characterizing someone. It's always doing work, which is just phenomenal writing. So The Great Gatsby, I'm sure you know the premise, but it follows the narrator Nick Carraway, who moves to New York, meets Jay Gatsby, and is in awe of his life. He's super rich in this mansion, but there's kind of a question of where he got his money, and you kind of start to realize that he's been pining after Nick's cousin Daisy, who is already married and in another relationship with another very wealthy man. Without giving too much of the plot away, a lot of it is social and class commentary. I think the reason why it's so meaningful to me is because this is when I was kind of learning about the American dream and capitalism and American work ethic, and it kind of really opened my eyes to the ways in which you can work and work and work, and yet something about our systems are still never going to get you to the place you want to be. However, I did see something, this was actually in the movie Moxie. If you have seen that on Netflix, highly recommend. It was talking about how there are a lot of books written by more diverse authors, written by women, that still critique the American dream, but they don't do it from the still privileged white man's perspective. Like Gatsby is very much a privileged white man, and even though he still can't get into the inner circle, that is to be taken with a grain of salt. I know The Great Gatsby was written a long time ago, and I just still think it's beautiful writing, but I do really understand that viewpoint, and I would love for high school curriculums to start implementing other authors, but I do love that novel a lot. Okay, next is Hamlet by Shakespeare. I've only read 3 Shakespeare plays. I have read Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, and Hamlet, and I believe Hamlet is most people's favorites. I read it in a really meaningful class that was my senior year, that was very humanities based, and we did literature, sociology, philosophy, and I think that this was a perfect time to read it. I fell in love with the language, and I really just love the large themes of death and being afraid of death, and it's a very universal feeling. I think that's something very interesting about Shakespeare, is that he captures such quintessential human experiences and emotions to the point where it's just timeless, which is why so many people still love him today. And Hamlet is a very complex plot, very similar to The Lion King actually. It follows the main character Hamlet. His father has just died and he believes his uncle killed him to take his place on the throne, and he hears his father's ghost tell him to get revenge on his uncle, and he feels like he can't be satisfied with like this grieving process until he gets revenge. Okay, next is The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. I read it this January. It's in my January wrap-up video. The Bell Jar basically follows a woman throughout her life struggling with mental illness. She is alone in New York City, and it follows her all the way up until she is put in a mental institution. Very dark at times, but a very beautiful and I think important story if you're trying to understand women's experiences and also experiences of people with mental illness. Again, beautiful, beautiful writing. I could just feel the emotion of this woman, and really summarizes a lot of feelings of depression in such a poetic way. Not to romanticize mental illness, which I feel like is very easy to do in the realm of English literature, because a lot of the phrasing is beautiful, but it's beautiful because it's capturing a human emotion. Not that that human emotion is a good thing to experience, but just her ability to transfer it into words, I think, is really cool. Next, we have Emma by Jane Austen. I read this last semester. The only other Jane Austen novel I've read is Pride and Prejudice, and I liked Emma so much more. So Emma follows the character Emma, and she is very privileged and wealthy. She lives with her father. She's kind of like a spoiled child. She gets whatever she wants. It follows a lot of like town gossip and how people misbelieve rumors, and there's miscommunications between people and things get confused and there's drama, and it's very entertaining. I really love the way Jane Austen is able to create like love like pentagons or hexagons where like this person loves this person but they like them, and she's really good at mastering the idea of miscommunication and unreliable narrators. It makes for a very fun, entertaining story, and it's really fun to like decipher and reread. And I also really like that Emma is super sassy and independent and kind of mean sometimes. She's not perfect, but I just like that she is a female character with a lot of spunk. I really appreciate her relationship with Knightley. I love the romance and also the relationship between them in the sense that she's never dependent upon him. It's a very girl power kind of commentary, so I really appreciate that. The next book is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. I also read this in that meaningful class I was talking about when I read Hamlet. This again, I think, is so meaningful to me because of the things that I learned and took away from it. The Bluest Eye follows a little girl, Piccola, and she is a poor black girl in Lorain, Ohio. They reveal this on the first page, so it's not a spoiler. She's raped by her father and becomes pregnant. And it basically just follows kind of her own like hatred toward herself, and what does it say about a society that makes black women hate themselves, treats them like they're so unseen that like these terrible things just happen to them. Like, it's very intense, very sad. So you have to read it with like a certain mindset. Again, I think it's one that really needs to be put in curriculums because it's so important to hear stories where a black girl is at the center. That's sadly all too rare. The next book I want to talk about is 1984 by George Orwell. This one is another one that I love because it summarizes the human experience. It has one of my all-time favorite quotes of a book ever, which I might put somewhere around here because I don't remember it word for word, but it's one of my favorite book quotes ever. But it basically follows a science fiction kind of world in the future where the government is controlling us. It's like, have you ever heard Big Brother is watching you? It's from this book. You can't think without them seeing your thoughts. They're constantly watching and they're trying to catch people. They will arrest and kill whoever wants to rally against them, and they feed them lies basically, and if you don't believe the lies, they kill you, and the main character starts to realize something is off. But it's kind of about how to be an individual person, where freedom comes from, lots of themes that I'm not articulating well because I read it a long time ago, but I just remember really being moved by it. Next, a very similar kind of book is Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. I read this my freshman year of high school. I think it really helped me fall in love with books because it's very similar to 1984 in that it follows an authoritarian government that is controlling people and going after people who don't listen or agree with them. But the premise here is that they burn books, and there's a lot of technology in this world that replaces books, and it's kind of talking about what makes books so important, what do we stand to lose without them, how we're becoming so like disassociated and distant from other people because of the use of technology. I talked about it in my books I read this summer because I reread it last summer. Yes, definitely one of my favorites. Also, Ray Bradbury is probably one of the best writers ever, probably one of my favorite writers. Number 3 is Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. I read this book over the summer as well. I believe it's in my books I read this summer video too. Wow, honestly, one of the best pieces of literature ever written. That is what I said in my Goodreads review, so you can go check it out. I just absolutely love Charles Dickens' writing. I don't know what it is because a lot of people hate it because it's very wordy and lengthy, but he has these big romantic quotes about love that could be considered cheesy, but personally I love them. I will put one of those quotes up here from Great Expectations because I absolutely love it. And it basically follows the story of Pip. He is an adult narrating his whole life, and then it goes back to him as a child. He grows up very poor. He's training to be a blacksmith, and then he learns that he has a benefactor. So he moves to London, he kind of learns like high proper society, and has a lot of class commentary. I don't want to explain any more of the plot because I feel like it's good to go in blind, but if you have read it or plan on reading it, just know I love the story with Miss Havisham and Estella. I really like how it kind of talks about women who are trained to be beautiful and nothing else, and are kind of used as like a weapon of manipulation, how like feminine beauty is kind of prized but also limiting. And I also just love the heart to some of the characters. Joe, and I forget his name, Magwitch, and I forget the name of Pip's friend in London. Also really, really cute. It's basically class commentary, but also it has a lot of really great twists and turns and plot, and I love the characters. Okay, number 2 is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. In all honesty, this might be one of the only books where I prefer the movie. And this is still one of my favorite books, so in no way am I saying that the movie is or the book is bad in comparison, because the book is phenomenal, but I've never had a movie so accurately capture what the book was trying to do. And when I look at other adaptations that are not Greta Gerwig's, they just feel like they're dumbing it down. And also the fact that the movie has Joe end up alone and not marrying anyone is amazing, because that's probably what Louisa May Alcott would have intended, because she herself never got married, but she had to sell the book for money, so she had to write what would have sold best. So I think the movie just captures the entire essence of the book and then improves upon it even further by adding in pieces of Louisa May Alcott's life. Little Women, if you don't know, is just about 4 sisters, the March family, and their mom. They live in Massachusetts in the 1860s. I believe the Civil War is going on as the book takes place because their father is fighting in a war. They're like middle class poor, and it really just goes through their life. And what I love about it is that it captures the simplicity of life, but it captures real women. Again, similar to the Bluest Eye, I think it's really important to have people who are not typically at the center of stories at the center of stories. So I'm sure, especially in this time period, there weren't a lot of books or stories entirely about women. And there are male characters like Laurie, but most of it centers around women. Jo March is one of my favorite fictional characters of all time. Again, similar to Emma, I just love independent, fiery characters, women who are outspoken, who are not afraid to be themselves, who break norms. I love female characters like that, whether they're good or bad. So always holds a special place in my heart, and the 2019 adaptation is my favorite movie. It's on my wall right there. And also Timothée Chalamet as Laurie is on my wall. That's another reason why the adaptation is the best, because Timothée Chalamet. Alright, number 1. Can we guess what it is? Probably not. Number 1 is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. To be honest, in comparison to Great Expectations, I think Great Expectations is way better, but A Tale of Two Cities holds a special place in my heart, and for that reason, no matter how much it compares to any other book, it has to stay number 1. I think like through middle school and just growing up in like the society that we currently live in, not really reading a lot of books, most people don't read a lot of books, I kind of grew distant from reading and I didn't really read as much. And in 10th grade, I was very depressed and bored and alone. I had like 3 friends. I never talked to anybody. I literally did nothing all the time. And I didn't read, so I was just like bored. And I read A Tale of Two Cities in my English class. I absolutely loved it. Again, it's Dickens' writing, but also his characters and plots. He has a lot of plot twists, a lot of really vibrant characters, and the characters have a lot of heart to them, like you really love them. And again, there is a quote in A Tale of Two Cities that I remember very clearly. It's a cheesy romantic quote, but it's "You kindle me, heap of ashes that I am, into fire." And the main character, one of the main characters, is saying this to the woman he loves. To be honest, I don't entirely remember the plot. It follows 2 different stories. It's a tale of 2 cities in Paris and London, I believe. It's at least France and England, and it takes place during the French Revolution. So again, there's class commentary because it's Charles Dickens. I read it at the right time in my life, so even if like independently it's not the best book ever, it is probably the book that is of the most importance to me, or that like holds a special place in my heart. So yeah, those are my top 10 favorite classics. As an English literature major, I have a lot more classics to read in my life, so this ranking could change. There could be completely new books that end up on the list. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what your favorite classics are, if we have any ones in common. I'd love to find more, so please give me recommendations. Yeah, bye guys!